This is Ben Carper. I am a Greenville, South Carolina native. I have 7 grandfathers buried in the state of South Carolina, a 9th generation South Carolinian. I live in Congressional District 4, State Senate District 6, House District 22, and County Council District 22. I live at 8 East Lee Road in Taylors, South Carolina, the house that my grandfather built back in 1950. I continue dealing with the United Nations Agenda 21. This is the 7th installment, United Nations Agenda 21. How did the world arrive at the matter of Agenda 21? You reach all the way back into the United Nations Charter in 1976, and their section called Habitat 1. You move forward from that to 1987 and the World Commission on Environment and Development. It was in 1987 that a new word was added to the vocabulary, or a new phrase, sustainable development. That was added in 1987. From 1987 to 1992, and I followed the Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit very carefully back in 1992. I was in my late 20s, and I followed that day by day by day. And much of the 1976 UN Charter on Habitat, moving forward to the 1987 World Commission on Environment, was codified in the Rio Earth Summit in 1992. It was out of this 1992 Rio Earth Summit that United Nations Agenda 21 was developed. It was the agenda for the 21st century. Now, this agenda has been broken down and subdivided: Agenda 2010, 2015, 2020, 2025, 2030, 2035, and so on. But the overall umbrella of this is Agenda 21. There were phrases on sustainable development. In fact, the United Nations defines the sustainable development as, I quote, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Now, that sounds innocuous enough. We're trying to be good neighbors and we don't want to do anything to harm our children and grandchildren. It is everything but that. It is everything but that, as I'll point out in just a moment. The idea of our common future was presented to the United Nations General Assembly in 1987. The World Commission on Environment and Development, the Brundtland Commission, was tasked with designing strategies. These were hammered out at Rio. We have, as a result of that, Agenda 21. Now, there are 4 sections in Agenda 21 that are extremely important. And those that are paying attention see this development right here in Greenville, South Carolina on February the 11th of 2025. And then in other parts of the United States where these videos are being played and the audio part is being played. I've received letters from up in Indiana where a group of citizens up there now is beginning to push back against the ICLEI, which is the implementation at the local level. Greenville, South Carolina, the city, is a member of the ICLEI directly from the United Nations. Section 1 is social and economic dimensions. Section 2 is conservation and management of resources and development. Section 3 is strengthening the role of major groups. Now, these major groups are what you and I are seeing right now. It is developers, and it is the development of multifamily property. It is the push against single-family residency. You and me as citizens being able to work our land, farm our land, control the water that runs across our land, all of that taking away. And now we have non-government organizations, large developers, international development interest. And then there's a means of implementation, and this is by things like we have in Greenville now with this Unified Development Ordinance, which is shot through with United Nations language. No one down there at Greenville County wrote that. That came right from the United Nations, the UDO from the United Nations. Why does Greenville County use the International Building Codes? Right from the United Nations. You mean in Greenville, South Carolina, we don't have enough retired builders and electricians to develop our own building codes and develop our own safety standards? We would have to use something down from the UN. This is how all of this is implemented. So you can read it for yourself. Go on the United Nations website. Type in United Nations Agenda 21. Go to chapter 7. There you have the human settlements. That's the foundation of another buzzword now, sustainable communities. And in the last chapters, you'll see the technologies that they're going to use in quote-unquote smart cities to implement all of this. Now again, we're back to language. They use the precautionary principle. This came out of the 1992 Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit. And the precautionary principle. Now, none of us would be opposed to that language on its face. I think all of us ought to be very cautious in life and cautious in conduct. But they change the definitions of the words, which I'll touch on in a moment. The precautionary principle, I'm quoting, the precautionary principle states that if an action or policy has a suspected risk of causing harm to the public or to the environment, in the absence of scientific consensus that the action or policy is harmful, the burden of proof that it is not harmful falls on those taking the action. You are guilty until proven innocent. The United Nations says this is what we want to do. The citizenry, you and I say, we're not interested in that. Here's what we want to do. The UN says, oh, but you're trapped by the precautionary principle. You say, what is that? And they say, well, you prove that what you're going to do on your land isn't going to harm all the rest of us. You prove it. No, wait a minute. I'm innocent until proven guilty. I have the constitutional principle of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. If I want to use that 30 acres for a pasture to put cattle on, they say you can't do that. You prove that it won't hurt the environment. Rather than the Constitution, I'm innocent until proven guilty. Now let me bring all of this home in the next few moments. In 1992, President Clinton was elected, and in the summer of 1993, by Executive Order 12852, he created the President's Council on Sustainable Development. The President's Council on Sustainable Development. They met in the summer of 1993. They continued until 1999. The members of this cabinet included the cabinet secretaries for transportation, agriculture, education, commerce, housing and urban development, Environmental Protection Agency, the Small Business Administration, Energy, Interior, Defense, and then there were people like the CEOs of Pacific Gas and Electric, Enron, you remember Ken Lay? Ken Lay was there, Enron, BP, Amoco, Dow Chemical, and others. Environmental organizations like the Natural Resources Defense Council, Sierra Club, World Resources Institute, the Nature Conservancy, the Environmental Defense Fund, all of these people were there. And all this did from 93 to 99 was lay the groundwork for implementing United Nations Agenda 21 into the fabric of your community and mine, into the fabric of Greenville County, Pickens County, Spartanburg County, Anderson County. The goal was to change public policy to bring it into alignment with United Nations Agenda 21. We were to conform to what came down from the UN, from the United Nations. Not the United Nations leave us alone to let us chart our own lives. And so the recommendations of this were published in a book entitled Sustainable America, a New Consensus. Now, let me touch on this new consensus. And the next time I speak to you, I want to talk to you about the Delphi technique. And most of us have been Delphied and didn't know it. One of the elements of the new rule of law is the creation of a new language to go with it. This is called jargon. It's a new vocabulary. Every industry has its own jargon, and you have to learn that in order to really understand what is being said. But this is the problem. The jargon they're using does not have the same definition as what you and I are accustomed to. Now, here are some of the new language that's come out of this. Livable, walkable, vibrant, bikeable, consensus, conversation, progressive, community, diversity, carbon footprint, smart cars, smart vision, smart meters, smart appliances, smart TVs, vision, green, stakeholders. We were told that the citizens in Greenville County, when our taxes were raised, were not stakeholders in Greenville County. Right. I mean, in all of this UDO debate, it's right out of the UN, that we're not stakeholders, you and me, living in Taylors and Paris Mountain and in Greenville County. We're not stakeholders in the counties, right out of the United Nations. Regional, sustainable. Now, all of these are buzzwords, and they're buzzwords to manipulate you. When you hear jargon words like this, you're being conditioned to support and accept the project that they are planning for you, that you'll go along with what they have for you. They're designer buzzwords, and you start talking in that language and you feel cool and accepted and hip, and you feel like you're a part of the masses. The word consensus, for example, is defined in the dictionary as an opinion or position reached by a group as a whole. But when I read in the President Council on Sustainable Development, their definition of consensus is not the same as what I read in the dictionary. Quote, we need a new collaborative decision process that leads to better decisions, more rapid change, more sensible use of human, natural, and financial resources in achieving our goals, end quote. It doesn't have anything to do with you speaking out and saying, wait, I don't agree with this. It has everything to do with you shut up and get in line. This new collaborative decision process, the new definition for consensus, is to neutralize any of us that would express opposition. This is certainly not the democratic way of doing things, because it actually doesn't allow for any kind of dissent at all. There can be no opportunity for failure in implementing Agenda 21 according to the United Nations, and if that means shutting down citizens like you and me, then they simply will shut down citizens like you and me. They've already done it. They're trying to do it. They will continue to try to do it. Somebody says, but we need to bring these two sides together. Well, if I have a glass of milk and a glass of water, and I mix the two together to form consensus, I have neither milk nor water. Now, I must close, but let me say this. The other side generally is running all these meetings that we go to, and we try to push back and fight back and sound out. But they have manipulated these meetings, like on the matter of the tax increase, when the county council chambers were filled up with county employees so the citizens couldn't get in. That is a Delphi technique. When I went the other day to the county council meeting, they were talking about the Bilo Center, Bond Secure Wellness Arena, the Bilo Center for those of us that are natives, and they said we need $70 million to do this and to fix this, and they had all of the people lined up to speak in favor of it. That is the Delphi technique. It was predetermining an outcome. This is the outcome we want, so we will arrange the meeting so that those of us that were there feel like, hey, I'm the only one that doesn't agree with this. When actually there are tens of thousands of people in Greenville County that don't agree with having their money spent that way, but because of the Delphi technique, they are made to feel like they are the only one. Now, I'll continue the next time and go into detail concerning the matter of the Delphi technique. This has been Carper, South Carolina native, Greenville County native, and may the Lord bless you until our next time together.